You can pay the fee, you can bring the right gear, and you can still be turned away at the gate of Mount Fuji because Mount Fuji is not open all year. And in 2026, reaching the top is no longer one ticket. It is 5 checkpoints, and most travelers only discover them at the trailhead when it is already too late. Many people picture Mount Fuji as a place they can visit whenever they like. You fly into Japan, see that perfect cone on a postcard, and assume you can just show up and walk to the top. For most of the year, that is not how it works. For most of the year, that is not how it works. People who learn this too late often find out at the worst moment, standing at the trailhead, dressed to climb, only to find the way up closed. There is a short official climbing season, usually across the summer, and outside of it, the mountain becomes a very different, far more dangerous place. So let me walk you through what changed, why the rules exist, and how to enjoy Mount Fuji without turning your Japan trip into a stressful emergency. Let me paint a quick scene. Imagine it is late spring. You have a free day in your itinerary. The sky looks clear and you think, today is the day. Today I climb Mount Fuji. You take a train, then a bus, and arrive at the 5th station, the usual starting point, partway up the slope. The mountain is right there in front of you, but instead of an open trail, you find barriers, signs, and staff. The path to the top is simply not open yet. That feeling, being so close and still turned away, is common. It is not unkindness. The climbing season has not started, and the mountain above the 5th station is not ready for visitors. A simple way to put it, seeing Mount Fuji and climbing Mount Fuji are not the same trip. In 2026, the main trails are scheduled to open in early July and close around September 10th, although the exact date depends on the route and the conditions. The Yoshida Trail and the Subashiri Trail are scheduled to open on July 1st. The Fujinomiya Trail and the Gotemba Trail open a little later around July 10th because snow and weather can change the situation. Always check the official Mount Fuji climbing site before you build your day around the climb. People sometimes assume that an empty off-season trail means a quieter, luckier climb. In reality, it is the opposite. Outside the season, the mountain huts are shut, the toilets are closed, staff and rescue support are minimal. Snow, ice, and sudden weather can turn what looks like a summer hike into a serious mountaineering challenge. A closed Mount Fuji is not a quiet version of the summer climb. It is a harder, colder mountain, and fewer people does not always mean safer. There is one more thing about going up when the mountain is closed. Public rescue may still come, but it is never truly free. It uses people, equipment, and time that other emergencies may also need. So on a mountain, your choice is rarely only your own. Now, why did the rules get stricter? For years, Mount Fuji welcomed enormous numbers of climbers, and that popularity created real problems. On the busiest nights, the path near the summit became a slow, crowded line of people in the dark, all trying to reach the top for sunrise. One particular habit made things worse. It is sometimes called bullet climbing. That means climbing straight through the night from the bottom to the summit without resting at a mountain hut along the way. It sounds efficient, even adventurous. In practice, it leaves people exhausted, cold, and far more likely to suffer altitude sickness because the body has no time to adjust to the thinner air higher up. Add litter, crowded trails, and pressure on the few toilets, and you can see why something had to change. The new rules are less about saying no to visitors and more about keeping the mountain safe enough to stay open. So here is the simple version of the 2026 rules. Think of them as 5 checkpoints, not one ticket. First, there is the season. You cannot assume the summit trails are open just because the mountain is visible. A trail can look clear from a viewpoint and still be closed higher up. The mountain you see in photos and the mountain you are allowed to climb are decided by two different calendars. Second, there is the fee. At the time this episode was prepared, all 4 routes to the summit required a hiking fee of 4,000 yen per person. Think of it less as an entrance ticket and more as your small share of keeping the mountain safe, clean, and open during a very short season. Third, there may be a reservation step. Paying the entry fee, reserving a climbing slot, and booking a place to sleep are 3 separate things. Many travelers hear the word reservation and assume one booking covers everything. It does not. A simple way to hold it in your head is this: payment is not a plan, and a pass is not a bed. Fourth, there are daily limits. On the Yoshida Trail, the system is built around a daily limit of about 4,000 climbers. On the busiest days of the season, that number can be reached earlier than most travelers expect. You should not assume that arriving at the 5th station automatically means you can continue upward. Once the daily limit is reached, new climbers can be stopped. The exact system can change, but the important point is simple. Visibility is not permission, and arrival is not always access. Fifth, there are gate times. On the Yoshida Trail, the gate at the 5th station is generally closed from around 2 in the afternoon until 3 in the morning the following day. The main exception is for climbers who have booked a night at one of the mountain huts. Think of it like reaching an airport after check-in has already closed. Your ticket can be real and you still cannot board because the timing has passed. So, if your plan is to start in the evening and climb through the night, you usually need a hut reservation, not just an entry ticket. This is the rule I mentioned at the start, the one that catches even careful travelers off guard. They have the fee and the gear and still cannot pass, simply because they did not book a hut. These details, the fees, caps, gate times, and reservation systems can change from one year to the next. Treat them as a starting point and confirm the current rules on the official site before you go. Not a blog, not an old video, and not a memory from a previous trip. Climbers are also asked to complete a short safety briefing before they set out. On the Shizuoka side, this is handled through the prefecture's Fuji Navi app. On quick filming warning, above the 8.5 station of Mount Fuji, drones and paragliders are prohibited by the landowner. Mount Fuji Hongu Sengen Taisha Shrine. Around Mount Fuji and nearby viewpoints, drone rules can also vary by place, land manager, filming purpose, and Japan's aviation law. So before bringing a drone, check the rules for the exact area where you plan to fly. A simple way to remember all of this: in 2026, you cannot just turn up and walk to the summit. You pay, you often reserve a spot, you may need a hut, and you pass through a gate. With that in mind, let me clear up 3 things that often get misunderstood. The first is the gap between the 5th station and the summit. The 5th station, where most people begin, is already part way up, and it is a pleasant place to visit on its own, with views, small shops, and a relaxed atmosphere. But reaching the actual summit from there is a long, demanding climb, often 5 to 6 hours going up, with a real change in altitude. Visiting the 5th station and climbing all the way to the top are 2 completely different experiences, and many travelers only want the first one. That is perfectly fine. The second misunderstanding is about gear. Mount Fuji can look soft and almost smooth in photographs. On the mountain itself, it is cold, windy, and rocky, and the weather can change very quickly. Sneakers and a light jacket are simply not enough near the top, even in summer. Proper shoes, warm layers, water, and a headlamp are the difference between a hard but rewarding day and a genuinely dangerous one. The summit sits at about 3,776 meters, high enough that the thin air really does change how your body feels. The third misunderstanding is the idea that climbing at night is easier simply because it feels cooler and less crowded. Darkness changes more than the temperature. It hides how tired you actually are, and it makes small decisions like whether to rest or keep going much harder to get right. Night climbing has its own quiet dangers. Fatigue that creeps up slowly, cold that settles in once you stop moving, and the temptation to keep pushing forward instead of resting. So, what should you actually do? Before you go, make 3 decisions. First, decide your route and your date using the official rules, not a spare afternoon in your itinerary. The Yoshida Trail, Subashiri Trail, Fujinomiya Trail, and Gotemba Trail do not all work exactly the same way. Second, decide whether this is a day climb or an overnight climb. If you want to climb through the night, rest before sunrise, or pass the gate during restricted hours, book a mountain hut early. A hut is not a hotel. It is usually a simple shared space where climbers sleep side by side for a few hours. It may not be comfortable in the usual sense, but it gives you shelter, rest, and time to adjust to the altitude. Third, decide your safety limit before the climb starts, and decide it together if you are climbing with others. Bring proper shoes, warm layers, water, a headlamp, and cash, including small notes and coins. Know the early signs of altitude sickness, a mild headache, nausea, or feeling unusually short of breath. If symptoms get worse, go back down rather than push on. There is no prize for reaching the top while you feel terrible. If you are climbing with others, agree in advance that anyone can say, "I need to stop." Decide your turnaround time before everyone is tired, not after. On a mountain, the bravest person is often the one willing to turn the group around. Here is a scene that plays out more often than people expect. A traveler finishes a relaxed afternoon near the 5th station. The weather looks perfect, the light is fading into a soft gold, and the summit looks close enough to touch. No hut booked, just a strong feeling that tonight is the night. By 9 in the evening, the gate is already closed and will not open again until 3 the next morning. There is no trail to slip onto, no staff willing to look the other way. Just a barrier, a sign, and 6 cold hours ahead, with the mountain sitting silently in the dark, completely indifferent to anyone's schedule. Nothing about that traveler's gear or fitness was the problem. The only thing missing was a piece of paper booked weeks earlier for a bed in a hut partway up the mountain. Every checkpoint we just walked through exists to prevent exactly this moment. And here is the reassuring part many travelers overlook. You do not have to reach the summit to have a real Mount Fuji experience. The 5th station is easy to reach. The lakes and viewpoints are beautiful on a clear day. Standing at the base, looking up at that huge, quiet shape is its own kind of memory. If the season is wrong, the weather turns, or the climb feels like too much, choosing not to go up is not a failure. Sometimes respecting the mountain means climbing it carefully, and sometimes it means not climbing it at all. You do not have to summit Mount Fuji to respect Mount Fuji. If you do climb, the mindset that helps most is patience. Move slowly, drink water, rest at the huts, and be ready to turn back if the weather changes. The mountain will still be there. No view from the summit is worth pushing through real danger to reach. To bring this together, Mount Fuji is not turning visitors away. It is asking them to climb with a little more care. There is a season, there are fees, reservations, gates, hut rules, safety briefings, and filming restrictions. But once you understand them, the trip does not get smaller. It gets safer, calmer, and a little more meaningful. You can still stand above the clouds and watch the sunrise from the top. You simply plan for it instead of stumbling into it by accident. If this kind of explanation helps you feel more prepared for Japan, you can follow Hiro Explains Japan wherever you listen or watch. Here is something I would like to leave you with. In your own country, when you visit a famous natural place, does it usually feel wide open and unmanaged, or is it carefully controlled with rules, fees, and limits? I am curious how Mount Fuji compares to what you are used to. Next time, we will look at another part of Japan travel that often surprises visitors. Why some famous places now feel more controlled, more crowded, and more rule-based than people expect. 日本からヒロがお届けしました。またお会いしましょう。